Hello, everyone. My name is Linda Grosef, Program Director for Vision Loss Alliance. And also with us this evening, we have Elsa Zavoda, Vice President of Programs.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Elsa.
For those of you who don't know us, we are the voices you hear, welcoming everyone into the Zoom room. Thank you for joining us this evening. And just a reminder, this program is being recorded, so we do ask that you please mute yourself. I'm going to give a few moments of quiet, and then we will officially begin.
How do you mute yourself?
*6, I believe.
*6?
Or just be as quiet as you can. In addition to our evening programs opportunities, VLA offers an array of in-person programs and weekly virtual programs. If you're interested in learning more about our organization and programs, please contact me, Linda Grosef, at 973-627-0055, prompt number 4. This evening's program is sponsored by Vision Loss Alliance of New Jersey. Tonight, we are excited to welcome back Doug Gilbert, Certified Orientation and Mobility Specialist, who will be presenting on other physical disabilities which may impact your orientation and mobility skills and how to compensate for them. Before we begin, I'd like to share about our guest. Doug's vision loss was detected when he was an infant, and later at the age of 4 years old, he was diagnosed with dyslexia. Doug is a graduate of Rutgers University with a degree in the School of Management and Labor Relations. He has been an advocate for the Client Assistance Program, a job developer coordinator for the Adjustment to Vision Loss Program, and a traveler instructor for NJ TIP at Rutgers, where he taught students with disabilities how to use public transportation. And Doug now is a recent graduate from Salus University and has his master's and certification degree in orientation and mobility. Doug is now employed with the New Jersey State Agency, the New Jersey Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. We ask that you allow our guests time to present. When it's time for questions, Doug will cue you. So please use the raise your hand feature to ask your question. So let's review our Zoom protocol for tonight. For those of you who have dialed in, the raise your hand feature is *9. *6 will mute and unmute you, giving you the opportunity to ask your question. If you're on a computer, Alt-Y is the raise your hand, Alt-A is the mute and unmute command. Using the Zoom app on the iPad, move to the top right, select the more options and flick down to the raise your hand feature. On the iPhone, this feature is located at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side. At this time, we are honored and we welcome Douglas Gilbert.
Hello, everyone.
Doug.
How's everyone doing tonight? Good?
Good.
All right, glad to hear it. Excuse me. So, in a nutshell, it's very, sorry for the ums, I'm going to work on that. Blindness rarely occurs in a vacuum, meaning there's almost always something else going on as well. May not be directly related to the blindness. For example, like a brain injury. A brain injury can cause all manner of problems, visual, sensory, cognitive, your ability to learn, etc. But also, vision is part of the aging process. As we get older, the old chassis isn't what she used to be. You got to change those tires. You got to check that oil. Now I'd like to make this maybe a little bit more interactive. So I was going to go with a little bit something different tonight. So I was going to basically briefly give you some of my strategies for how I would teach students with certain additional disabilities, but I'd also like to hear from the group because, your experiences are gold. Yeah, we all have vision loss to varying degrees. We all have vision loss for varying reasons. And somewhere along the line, something else has also crept up on us and said, surprise, here I am. I'm now part of your life. So let's begin by, let's talk about physical disability. This has come up on a number of occasions. One of the primary issues is you may have a mobility aid. This is usually a support cane, could be a walker, wheelchair. So how do you do O&M under these circumstances? Anyone? No?
It's an
Well,
open group, so just unmute yourself and join in the conversation.
well, a few examples, if I may.
Stacy's raising her hand, Doug.
Oh, okay.
So we have a person. Go ahead, Stace. Unmute yourself too. Stacy. We lost her. I don't know where she went.
Oh no.
There she is. Come on, Stace. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Well, with a walker, he's an extra long mobility cane.
Can you, Stacy, you need to speak a little slower and speak into your device so we can all
Okay.
hear.
Okay, I said, you can use an extra long mobility cane with a walker.
Indeed. And that is exactly what the technique I was about to discuss. I've had occasion with a few students where, yes, I would get a long fiberglass NFB cane, probably in the neighborhood of 5 feet long.
In the ALCF.
Someone's got to maybe at least turn off the TV.
Good.
Thank
Bring
you.
it in.
Awesome. So using a walker in conjunction with a lightweight mobility cane, I've actually done that. It's a little cumbersome. It's bulky. You're not going to be getting through very narrow corridors very quickly like that. And also I've done it with people who are also using a support cane as well as a mobility cane, also identical circumstances. One aspect that I have to be very aware of is that because this dance has gone from the hustle to a very complicated quadroon from medieval times, the complexity of the dance, the amount of thought that has to go into coordinating your feet, your arms, and your senses, as well as while I'm teaching a brand new skill, a brand new way of doing things, I have to take it easy. I have to take it slow. Getting tired is a very big part of a mobility impairment in addition to blindness, because, using this thing between your ears, this lump of fat we call a brain, it actually takes energy. 20% of your calories go towards feeding that thing. Thinking, learning, these things take effort and they do cause fatigue. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Doug?
All right, well, there's another thing that, go on, yes?
Oh, well, I said, and also I've done a mobility cane with a wheelchair, and that's not easy either.
Correct. I have not had that opportunity yet, but roughly along the same lines, the complexity of whether you're pushing the chair or even if you're using a joystick, the intellectual complexity increases ridiculously. So you have to be aware of that. Moving on. So there's also with some of my little kiddos, being that if you are congenitally blind, meaning born blind, imagine how many concepts of size, shape, direction, you just never learn, or you have to learn that in a completely different way. Now, the way I introduce, at least the way I've introduced a kiddo to mobility canes is we have something called an AMD, an augmented mobility device. It's a wide variety of devices. A lot of them have been made basically from PVC pipes and joints and rubber cement from Home Depot. But there are some mass, well, maybe not mass produced, but factory produced versions. If you would imagine a 4-year-old holding a device that's perhaps of 2 feet wide, close to 3 feet long. It's basically, imagine a rectangle made of PVC piping and joints. There's a rubberized handle at one end. The other end is a little bit smoother and somewhat oblong. So think a push toy from when you were really little, maybe a vacuum or a lawnmower or that Fisher Price thing on wheels that has a little, that makes the popping noises with the multicolored stuff inside the clear dome. It's essentially that kind of technique, so, you have to basically teach that from scratch. Now, that's not necessarily a physical thing, but in that case, we have to sort of introduce brand new concepts to people who just don't learn them visually. And a lot of us can take that for granted, that we've had vision in our early life, so that we have so many concepts, in our toolkit already ready to go. Any other questions or concerns? All right, I'd like to move on to hearing loss. So hearing loss is kind of profound if you already have a profound vision loss. Hate doing that, sorry. A lot of people, we substitute or augment our vision loss with hearing. I've been doing it all my life. I am an auditory learner. My colleagues at school and my professors were quite shocked at my ability to localize noises and identify noises and changes in the sonic environment. It's something that it's something that's learned. I'm not necessarily sure that people who have vision loss actually have better hearing. I think we just pay more attention to it. That's all. But could you imagine a world where, okay, you can't use, or your ability to use light to determine shape, size, possibly even direction. And now you've been using sound to do that. A big part of O&M, especially for people who have very profound vision loss, is we have to use sound to hear traffic. And when you hear the traffic, that's where you get we call it your dynamic alignment. So you use the traffic as a straight edge so that you can walk straight along the sidewalk. You need to hear cars coming and going when you cross that street. Whether it's the absolute absence of cars, whether you're doing an all quiet stop, or if you're relying on the surge of traffic in your near parallel so that you can cross the traffic light with them. You could augment your hearing loss with hearing aids. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about getting rid of the prescription part of hearing aids. I do believe you still need some kind of auditory professional to help match the proper technology and maybe even tweak it for you. I've never worked with, I have deaf-blind students on my docket. Communication is going to be very complex with the students. I do not sign. I certainly don't, blind sign. So I'm going to probably have to have an interpreter with me. So there's another level of complexity there when it comes to the teaching process. I've seen YouTube videos of successful O&M students, mostly in the city. They use a wide variety of strategies. The most basic and probably rudimentary is the oversized cue card, where messages like, I am deaf and blind, please help me cross the street, tap me on the right arm to let me know you're going to help me. So deaf blind people have several of these pre-done scripts ready to go. As a person with hearing loss, you may also want to have a few scripts ready to go with your vision loss. You may have to ask for assistance from the public more often than other people who are blind. Any questions at this juncture? No? Anyone experiencing hearing loss? I know we have very few school-age kids here. Anyone?
No, no one's raising their hand.
Wow. Well, I have noticed now that I am a man of a certain age, I'm not necessarily sure if my hearing is getting worse, but I am having more difficult time in a crowded situation. So now I've always been going to loud bars and nightclubs and things like that. So perhaps, Motorhead and Overkill have destroyed my hearing, distinct possibility, but I am now having a harder time picking out the conversation I want to listen to in a very crowded environment. Does that affect my ability to hear in the greater environment when I need to use auditory cues? So far, not yet, but I think that might be the early stage of an age-related hearing loss. So, I'm having a harder time distinguishing certain things from the background. Again, this can be difficult because is anyone here who participated in the conditions of uncertainty lesson that we did last fall? No? Well, basically what we did was we stood on Morris Avenue in front of the church, and you had to use all of your senses to detect a car. So you wanted to detect a car at the greatest distance possible. Then you would let me know. It's like, okay, a car. Then I'd start my stopwatch, and then when the car reached your nose, you'd say stop or something like that. The reason why we did that exercise is because when you are teaching street crossing, you would like the student as well as the teacher to be aware of two numbers. So in that particular exercise, I wanted to figure out how far one of the students at the Vision Loss Alliance could detect a car. And then the second part of the lesson was we actually had chalk marks in the parking lot where I timed people crossing a 2-lane street. So if you can detect a car either visually or auditorily at, let's say, a distance of 12 seconds, and if it takes you 6 or 7 seconds to cross a 2-lane street, well, that means that first part of the lesson, you do not cross the street if you can detect a car. That's just a bad idea. If there's a moving car, no, you can't cross. Second part of that lesson is if you start crossing the street and then you detect a car, if you have that information down, I hear a car at 16 seconds, but it takes me 7 seconds to cross the street, well, then you're golden. I hear the car, I still have plenty of time to finish my street crossing. But if you can hear a car at a distance of 5 seconds and it takes you 7 seconds to cross that street, well, you may want to jump back as quickly as possible, or it might be time to rethink your street crossing strategy. Anything else on hearing loss?
Any questions for Doug?
No.
All right.
All quiet, Doug.
All right. So let's talk about cognition. All right. Wide variety of things that can affect your brain. could be a brain injury, could be the medicine you take for another condition, could be, all manner of syndromes that you could be born with, or caused by injury. Again, as the teacher, I have to slow down. I have to slow way down. I have to maybe break the lesson up into little baby steps. So if I'm teaching a cane technique, I may have to start with, how are we going to hold it? How can we hold it and walk with it? How can we stand still and move the cane back and forth? And then gradually, taking each individual part of using a mobility cane and then maybe gradually tying it all together. Yes, a question? No?
No questions.
All right. So again, as now granted with my younger kiddos, there's a lot of school support for them. They're in a wide variety of special education programs. They have wide varieties of therapies going on. There's lots of support for these kiddos, and they can either learn new strategies or workarounds, or they could just get better. Now, for those of us who are older, the bounce back may not be as quick as it once was. If we get ourselves a concussion, now that we are people of a certain age, we can't mess around with that. You fall down and go boom. No, you have to go to the ER now. Because you lose, bits and pieces of the brain in addition to your vision loss. You're just going to make your life that much more complicated. Can anyone think of any problems with cognition plus vision loss that could be particularly problematic? Anyone?
Ashley,
Um,
anyone?
yeah,
Nisha? Oh,
hold on. You can
Yes.
see, right? I was trying to look for my camera too.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Hello?
okay, let's take Ashley's question first, and then we'll go to Nisha and then David, okay? Go ahead, Ashley.
Sure, sure.
Ashley, you have a line behind you, so ask your question, please. Okay.
Oh, okay, you want me to go first? Okay. Yeah, this is me, Ashley. So yes, your question, the question you asked us was how cognition affects our mobility or ability to learn mobility skills. For
Sure.
me, that's the case because of kind of what you said. I was born visually impaired, but I think a lot of the people acquired vision loss here. But anyway, I had a brain injury a few years ago, and so therefore it does affect some sort of memory and just ability to retain like information and like integrate information. So yeah, my question is do any of your students use something like maybe like a recorder or some sort of symbol system to help them like remember the environment, like, and remember what they've learned? Like, I know that, and my follow-up question is like, I'm wondering, for example, if like I know it's more so used for children, but I'm wondering if something like Tactile Town from APH would be like useful to like learn some concepts again, because like I got some ability growing up, but it wasn't as much as I would have liked. And long story short there. So yeah, that's what I was learning. Still learning, even though I'm an adult in my 30s. Thanks.
Indeed. So different learning modalities exist even in people who don't have, TBI, traumatic brain injury. So maybe, and of course, people with visual impairment, like those of us who are congenitally blind versus adventitiously blind, you have no choice but to adapt to a different learning modality. So I'm not entirely sure what Tactile Town is, but I do have a picture maker, a Wheatley board, and I've used that to draw basically the outline of an intersection, as well as try to create tactile maps. But however, to go to your question about reminding things, so we're kind of talking about two different aspects of mobility instruction. So there's the real physical stuff, the actual cane technique, the movement of the cane, the interpretation of the signals that the cane gives you. These how would you? I'm not entirely sure if recordings are, because I don't need you to have. I don't want my student to have more distractions than they need. Okay, the world is already a distracting place. Squirrel, but when it comes to prompting you for better cane technique, I'm not sure about that, but when we're talking about, let's say, maybe a route, if you are doing, let's say your walking route to work or your transit route to the mall, there's a number of apps, mobility apps that are dedicated for the blind and low vision user. So they're very auditory based, and some of them work very well with voiceover. You really have to see what's the best fit for you with these particular apps, but you can actually have saved routes in your phone on these navigation platforms. So as the student, Ashley?
Yes.
Yes. So if
Right.
Ashley, if I was Ashley's O&M instructor, and if Ashley were learning navigation apps for some very specific trips, when Ashley's getting ready, let's say, to go to work, she can go to her app library, whichever app she's using. Could be Lazarillo, could be Blind Square, could be Microsoft Soundscape. There's a bunch of them. All she would have to do is click my to work route, and then it would start talking and guiding her in. However, and here's the big caveat, I think that is one of the most advanced skills that I would teach. I would want to have many other orientation and mobility skills under your belt before I start teaching you these particular apps. Now, granted, the caveat is that circumstances is the mother of invention. So maybe you may not be totally trained up to the level you want, but if your job starts in 2 weeks and you need to get there, well, then, all hands on deck, and we pull out all the stops and I will make it work. But just so you know, the phone is just one more, it can be a distraction. So if I'm going to teach you how to use a navigation app, you're going to have to demonstrate to me as your teacher that you can handle that additional level of distraction. Because as a professional who's guided by a code of ethics, if I think for one moment you're jeopardizing your safety, I will have to stop instruction. All right. And anything else? What other conditions
We actually have two
Oh,
hands
we have-
raised, Doug.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry. Yes.
It's okay. Naisha, you can
Uh,
unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. So the one of the things that affects, I know as a type 1 diabetic cognitively, is when you have low blood sugars.
Mm,
And a lot of times people don't even realize or understand it. And cognitive behavior when you have low blood sugar. And that's when you have sight. Because I used to have the ability to see around me, but I'm 47 now, and my vision impairment and blindness came over years with retinal detachment. However, I was at one point able to read print, normal print, and then it got worse and worse and worse and worse. But the point is that even when I had enough vision to read normal newspaper print or normal print on a computer or read a computer, when I was going through, and I have several low blood sugars as a type 1 diabetic, and now I'm on an insulin pump, but when your sugars, and of course, sometimes that's in your capability to control, and at other times it's not. And you can always rectify it by eating something or getting a sugar pill. But when you're going through it, it's still a situation you're going through, and cognitively it affects you. That's when you have sight. So when you don't have sight, it's a whole kind of like different ball game. So I don't know if you know to speak on that, or if you just want an addition to something you might want to investigate researching, but it is an issue. So I just wanted to add that to the pot of throw that in there.
So I was going to cover metabolic and immunodisorders at the end, but no reason why we can't jump ahead. So diabetes, lupus.
Yes, I have that too.
Okay, so they're not related, just so everyone knows, but these are a wide variety of syndromes where your body chemistry is no longer cooperating with you for a wide variety of reasons, and or your body's immune system could be turning against you. So in the case of diabetes, especially, it can damage your vision. It can damage many other systems. It can get your kidneys, your liver, your pancreas, your heart, your vision. You can lose limbs. You can lose your feet. So when it comes to these particular disorders, which affect so many systems, and especially diabetes, when blood sugar, some people have told me it's kind of like being wasted. I had a friend in school. She did not, back in college, back at Rutgers, she didn't realize that the carrot cake had sugar icing on it. And she was like, she was hammered. She was giggling. She was a mess. So when it comes to these disorders, self-awareness is huge. You have to be your own minder. You have to carry the right medicine with you at all times. And that's another part of like the out of the house toolkit, which is something I think I covered last year. The medications that you require for any and all of these conditions. So physical, you may be under pain management. Some people take, there's a wide variety of psychotropic drugs or neurotransmitters that people take, for their mental health, as well as, other things. So yeah, have your daily meds with you just in case, because you might encounter a situation where you may not get home in time to take your 8 or 12 hour dose. Have your rescue medications with you. Have your, whether it's your inhaler or your EpiPen, your insulin, or whatever products. And also, these, the metabolic disorders, the immunodisorders, they just sap your strength. They really, really do. So when it comes to teaching these individuals, I would also have to be aware that stamina is a huge part of that. Absolutely. However, as a commission employee, I cannot carry sugar pills with me. I cannot do first aid. I have to just simply call 911. There are other instructors out there in private practice who carry all, who have their Red Cross certified. They have their sugar doses just in case. However, that's not me. Any questions about immunity? Well, actually, let's get through the other questions before we circle back to that. Anyone?
I think David, did you have your
You
hand
know-
up?
I did have my hand up, but I'm not sure my comment is relevant anymore. I miss it. I thought the question had to do with the interaction between cognitive abilities and your overall vision ability, not your mobility. And I was thinking about that. It's interesting because my vision loss was caused by what's called the TBI. And after my surgery, the first thing that they focused on in the hospital was my vision loss and not on my mobility. They sat me in a wheelchair at a table and dumped out change and said, okay, sort the change by the type of coin it is based solely on feeling the coin, having nothing to do with anything, to do with mobility. And I thought that was interesting. I never really thought about that until you just raised the connection between, your visual loss and your cognitive loss.
So circling back to cognition and vision, there is it's a fairly recent there's a new addition to the alphabet soup. CVI, cortical visual impairment, or NVI, neurological visual impairment. So very, very quick study of the brain and vision. So these two things in your face, the eyes, you may have seen them. All they do is gather light. At the end of the day, that's their only job, is to gather light. The real work happens in the brain. So basically, your optic nerves travel behind your nose, underneath your brain, past your brain stem, to the very back of the brain, the occipital lobe. If we're comparing the brain to a computer, that's your computer's video card. That is where the primary vision processing happens. But then the flow of vision then splits. It can go up or dorsal to the temporal lobe, or down or ventral to the parietal lobe. Now, let me see if I'm remembering this correctly. The temporal lobe in the vision system is the what center? What is its name? What is its function? What is that thing? What is its color? The parietal lobe is the where part of the vision equation. Where is that object? Is it moving towards me? Is it moving at all? Is it, are there moving parts to this object? Things like that. So when you have an injury to the brain, especially when it comes to a stroke or a blunt force trauma, it is so unpredictable what's going to happen in the brain. They're only just starting to study the vision brain interaction, and it's quite fascinating. I mean, there are some people who are displaying behavioral problems, like maybe people might say, oh, that's autism or something like that. But it might be, and I don't want to belittle or diminish the point by calling it just a cortical visual impairment, but it could be that is what that behavior could be. I've heard people to discuss something called a CVI meltdown, where their visual environment is so overwhelming to them because their ability to process the vision, the picture as a whole, it it's not there anymore. And now they are confronted with this nonsensical kaleidoscope of shape and color, and they're getting frustrated because they can't interpret this picture in front of them, and it's starting to interfere with other aspects of cognition, their ability to focus, their ability to hold on emotionally. It's a huge thing. And sometimes people, they, just like someone with autism, you have to step out of that environment, recollect, regroup. Some people, if they're going out with friends, they're like, I have to be gone before the band begins, because the band lights, the strobe lights, I can't cope with it. Or, oh, we're going to that restaurant with all the artwork on that wall. I'll go to that restaurant, but make sure my chair is facing away from that wall. So it may seem like Mickey Mouse that they made you go through that kind of thing, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say that perhaps there was additional therapeutic use to you doing that, and maybe either trying to ascertain what brain connections were damaged, what still exist, and how to maybe reestablish new connections to do old tricks.
Oh, I was fortunate. I did not end up having cognitive impairment, but they were very concerned about that, and they tested it every which way from Sunday.
Oh yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, the brain, it's so complicated, but sometimes it's so simple. The brain could just redirect all kinds of neural connections, but at the same time, there are these hardwired, they call them retinotopic connections. So there are actually 20 hardwire brain eye connections, very much like anyone remember the old Bugs Bunny cartoons where there was a device where like inner office mail used to be these pressurized tubes, and you'd put this message tube inside of it, then would suck it along, and no. But so or imagine like a period movie piece where you remember an old-fashioned telephone switchboard where you have the phone operators actually unplugging and plugging wires into jacks to route calls. That in some ways is the way the human brain is, but but in other ways it can actually relearn some of these things. So yeah, bottom line is we still don't really know what's going on in the brain. So anytime anything bad happens to it, they proceed with caution. Anything else? Questions, concerns, other
Anyone
impairments?
else have anything to add to that? Doug, when you had mentioned, it's Linda, when you had mentioned about cognitive abilities, I started to think about people who may show signs of dementia or Alzheimer's and visual impairments, and going out into the world and possibly forgetting where they are because they just can't cognitively remember.
It's a huge piece of it. It's an absolute, I mean, could you imagine being in your 80s and your memories only go back to when you're 8 years old, when you could see fine. And now you're confronted with the fact that it's not just that you think you're 8 and you're in Staten Island and you're 92 and you're in Morristown and your macular degeneration has progressed to the point where you're only getting the biggest of shapes and colors. The amount of panic that you could experience by forgetting how old you are and where you are has got to be tremendous. And under those circumstances, there's, how are you going to teach a strategy to someone whose memories predate even meeting you. You know, that in that case, it would probably be up to the care provider to make sure that that the loved one, that the patient, you know, has certain crucial items with them. You know, of course, you know, their medicines, important phone numbers, just in case someone on the street finds them. Yeah, I mean, I haven't addressed that yet. That has got to be probably one of the scarier prospects I'm going to probably have to face sooner or later. You know, how do I develop a plan for that individual? Because self-determination may not be the best choice at that point anymore. And one of the and a huge aspect of O&M is self-determination. You know, so that's somewhere I have to really tread with care.
Can I go back to something you said earlier?
All right.
You made a comment about how people who are visually impaired are often thought to have better hearing. When did that fallacy become commonplace? I don't understand it.
I've heard it all my life. Now, granted, I would do things like, you know, where my friends have movie night in the wintertime in their backyard. You know, they take a projector, shine it up against their giant fence. And, you know, somebody would say, oh, I didn't catch that line. And I would just rattle it right off. Could that just be that we're all getting older and my hearing is maybe degenerating slower than theirs? I don't know.
Or you're just more attentive?
Maybe I could just be paying more attention to the movie, but I've been doing stuff like this all my life. You know, I've been like, oh, hey guys, you hear that scratching noise? And they're like, what scratching noise? And then we find a mouse. But no scratching noises. It's okay, guys, we're good. But yeah, that's an old one. It's certainly one I've heard since I can remember.
Well, I have a friend who owns a restaurant, and we recently were having a going away party for somebody actually from Vision Loss Alliance who was moving, and we were doing a luncheon for the person. And I suggested we go to this particular restaurant, and we didn't go because most of the people who were going were vision impaired, and they all said the restaurant's way too loud. It's very confusing to sit there and hear all that noise. So I said, all right, I don't care. And I told the owner of the restaurant, I said, you know, I've told you this on several occasions, that you got to do something to mute the noise. And his response to me was along the lines of, oh, you blind people, you all hear so sensitively. And I just said to him, I said, and I didn't think you were one of the stupid ones.
Well, there is a place here in my town that I don't really go to that often because it is loud. Now, it's loud because they have hard tile on the floor. There's like no carpeting in here whatsoever. And a lot of the materials that this restaurant has really reflect sound in such a way that yeah, even under mild conditions, it can be a bit noisy. I mean, when there's a band there, forget about it. I don't even try to have a conversation there. But you know, what is inside of a restaurant or what is inside of a building, what's outside of a building can greatly enhance or mute other noises. You know, this is something that we all have to confront, you know, in different ways, shapes, and forms.
Can I make a brief comment?
Please.
Back when I had my vision, I found that if I had to concentrate on someone speaking that was speaking softly, if I closed my eyes, I could hear better because I was concentrating. By the same token, I used to restore old cars, and when I had to reach down to put a wrench on a bolt that I could not see, if I closed my eyes, I felt like I could feel better. So I think it's a matter of concentration.
Indeed. And also, like, you know, when you're restoring cars, you already have a cognitive map of kind of what that engine cavity looks like. you've had your hands down there. You have a sort of a tactile map of the interior of the car. So that can also go a long way. I'm going to circle back to other impairments. So it's not so much an impairment in and of itself, but pain management, right? We all have our aches and pains and they all come and go. And now some of them are more persistent than others. So how do I teach someone who's on a very powerful form of pain management? And the answer is with caution. I am not here to judge, but there are some very strong medications out there. And if I think that your pain management is, again, jeopardizing your safety, I may have to stop instruction, stop it cold. Again, not judging, but these are very strong medications. And if you're going to fall asleep, or if you're inattentive because of one thing or another, no, I would have to stop. That doesn't mean that everyone who's taking Percocet doesn't get orientation and mobility instruction from me. Other people handle it different ways. And most of the time, the medicine you take is none of my business. Now, granted, part of my questionnaire is the medicines you take. It's mainly just to provide a baseline. So it's like, oh, you're insulin dependent. I'm going to ask you if you have your sugar before we leave the house. But I mean, if you have arthritis, or if it's something even more profound, it's basically case by case. Does anyone feel that their medicine or pain management regimen could be interfering with either it could interfere with your vision or your cognition or your ability to pay attention?
No.
I know Stacy
Yeah.
has her hand up, but I don't think it's related to medication. So let's cover
Oh.
that first. David? David?
No, I don't feel that way, but I'd like to find one of those doctors who liberally prescribe. I just haven't been able to find it.
I will neither comment on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and sort of a segue, intoxicants. Again, I'm not here to judge. I did have a student who is an active cannabis user. They are not my student anymore. I never got to the instruction phase, but the student used cannabis immediately before I got to their residence. They were not trying to hide it. But because it was so in my face, I had no choice but to ask about it. Conversely, if I come to your house for a lesson or an interview, and if you smell like scotch, I'm going to ask you about that. We cannot have, there will be no O&M using recreational substances. Can't afford it, can't have it. Cannabis is kind of one of those middle of the ground things. It could be medical, could be recreational. I'm not here to judge. If you need cannabis for anxiety relief or pain management, again, I'm not here to judge, but if you have to use it right before our lesson, I don't know. I haven't got there yet. Who here crosses streets regularly after going to the bar? You don't have to answer that. But I'm sure most of us who use alcohol use it responsibly, even though we're not driving. You still have to get home. You still have to deal with people. So if you're gonna drink to the point where crossing the street is dangerous, you either better have a buddy, or you may want to think about giving up the bottle. I'm not entirely sure. What does the group think about alcohol and cannabis and mobility.
No takers on that one, huh?
All right. Well, this is a very sober group. I commend you.
Linda,
Go ahead, Stace.
Hey, wait a
Well-
minute, wait a minute. Sobriety can be somewhat overrated.
Stacy, go ahead. You have something to
Okay.
say?
well, the whole, well, I'm not, well, I have issues with medicine that makes me sleepy, which is a beta blocker. And I also have blood thinner. I'm on a blood thinner. So I sometimes act like I'm drunk, but I'm not because my levels are out of whack.
Okay, right.
I've had even blood sugar levels where they were really high or really, really low. So it's kind of like, I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't. And when I was on a different beta blocker, that's actually affected my vision.
Mm,
Like I started, well, before I took the beta blocker, I was seeing double.
oh.
Then I started seeing triple. This, but I
A
had
lot of
RP. But I had RP. But then I was diagnosed with cataract that I had removed. And then
So-
scar tissue removed. So
Stacy.
when I started, okay, I'll finish.
Well, no, I want to ask you a question, actually. So I think Doug's question is, how do you feel that some of these medications affect your mobility?
Well, the one that makes me, I've almost lost my balance. Like when stuff goes out of whack, I can feel numb in the hands or the face,
Mm.
the nose.
So if you were my student and we're discussing your medication and how they interact with you, I would say, first of all, are these rescue medicines? Are these medicines you take when a crisis is coming on, or is this your day-to-day dosage?
These are day-to-day doses.
Okay, fantastic. So they make you a little bit tired. Sometimes they affect your vision. Do they affect your ability to pay attention to me and traffic and things around you? Do you think?
I don't think it does. I mean, it usually happens like when I do feel like I'm gonna fall asleep, usually the room is too hot.
Mm,
And usually it's like between like 2 o'clock and like 4 or 5 o'clock. And usually when I start to feel like I'm gonna fall asleep and I'm home, I will lay down on the couch and I will eventually fall asleep. But I've been in public recently because the doctor adjusted my levels to higher. And I actually zoned out in a chair while waiting for Access Link. And I knew exactly where I was. But then someone said something to me and I got startled. Like, what did you say? Like,
all right.
but I
So
knew, but I knew exactly where I was. I knew exactly what I was doing. But it was just like I zoned out.
all right, but so you see, but you were what's the word I'm looking for? Even though these medications caused you to feel these particular ways, you are also in a somewhat sedentary state. So if I were to be your O&M instructor, and if our lesson was from 3:30 to 4:30, right, during your period of torpor, let's call it,
No,
right?
yeah, because energy level low.
All right. So if that was the only time you were available, the only time I'm available, and you needed this lesson, do you think you could fight your way through? Would a cup of coffee do? Or would we just have to reschedule that lesson?
No, I can pop some sugar or something with some caffeine to fight through it.
So you
It doesn't always happen at that
Right.
time zone. It's
I may not feel sleepy. It might be I start having I'm gonna call it an episode in my head.
Mm.
And it freaks the crap out of me. People think I'm crazy, but I can hear it, and doctors can hear it through a stethoscope. So it's like the whole panic attack. I gotta talk myself, calm down. You're here, you're wherever, and it goes away. Or at least I calm myself down and just, okay, it's happening.
So guys, Stacy's actually touching on a very crucial aspect of O&M, and this is the partnership between the teacher and the student. And because we are adults and we have words, this is the conversation that it's an ongoing conversation. It's the conversation we have when we first meet our students. It's the conversation that we have as we go out in the field and as we observe our students. So if I was with Stacy and if she was really inattentive, I might have to say, Stacy, what's going on? You completely missed that car. You almost walked right into that person, even though you tapped them with your cane, and because a significant aspect of O&M is constant and persistent evaluation of the student while we are teaching them. So all these little incidents, we're encouraged to note them and jot them down, because any clue may not be that insignificant. But yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. Anyway, I just kind of brought up, intoxicants, recreational as sort of a giggle, but I guess no one wanted to go for it. So any other questions or concerns or impairments or disabilities that I have not touched upon? What about mental health? Right? When we have, disturbances of mood and things like that, the medicines that these individuals take they can have horrible side effects and are also very powerful and can also affect cognition. So again, this is part of the ongoing conversation that we have to have with the individual, possibly even with other care providers. But also, could you imagine thinking about, what if someone is prone to panic attacks? Do you think this person, I'm not saying this person cannot cross Broad and Market Street in Newark, but I may have to maybe desensitize them to the loud city. We may have to start off at a traffic light in a quiet neighborhood. We may have to work our way up to all that fast pace, loud noise, mishigas going on. It could be that, if someone is profoundly ill with bipolar or schizophrenia, O&M may not be practical or safe. But, there's a wide variety, there's a wide dearth of ground of in between, where people their meds are not impacting them and where, they are on top of their cognition. But again, it's something that the student has to try and be aware of. It's something that me as the professional that I have to be aware of. Any other questions, concerns?
It's Linda again. I actually want to make a comment because as you start really talking about everything that you as an orientation and mobility instructor that you start looking for, I hope everyone is really listening, because then that when you have your mobility with your instructor, they really look at you as a whole person, and everything affects your mobility and what you're learning, and how important it is to really be honest with them and share, what you feel with them, and in different instances. Anybody,
Right.
any questions, comments?
It just strikes me that Doug's concerns, alcoholism, drug abuse, mental health, the whole gambit of issues that you raised tonight, it just shows that visually impaired people are not exempt from all the other issues that everybody else has to cope with.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, absolutely. You know, in fact, we even have a couple of syndromes all of our own. Did you know there's blindness-induced psychosis?
Wait, say that again? Blindness?
Induced psychosis.
Oh,
There's actually a form of psychosis that's involved with profound vision loss.
wow.
Yeah, and yes, and just because, yeah, vision impaired, you are not exempt from all of life's slings and arrows, and they can come at you pretty quick.
This is Elsa. I actually have a question. Can you comment anything about the implications of Charles Bonnet syndrome on mobility?
Oh, yeah, that's so Charles Bonnet syndrome, it's a auditory hallucinations, right? Or am I thinking of something else?
Visual hallucinations.
Visual.
Visual hallucinations, but an awareness that they are not there. So it's different than delusions. It's an awareness that they aren't there, but the eyes are seeing things, the brain is seeing things that are not actually there.
Right,
Visual hallucinations.
right, but cognitively, you know that it's a hallucination. So
Correct.
it's a profound distraction. You know, I mean, it's not like schizophrenia, where the hallucination is a bit more holistic, you know, where your brain is actually thinking that voice is real.
Right.
So this is more like this is more like a sort of like a one-man band just comes out of nowhere and just crosses your path. Yes, really distracting, can really throw you a loop. You know, I mean, it hasn't. I haven't encountered it yet, but yeah, that has got to. I can only imagine where, you know, you're the student and these persistent, you know, flares of light and color, possibly even complete shapes, you know, just happen. You know, I mean, can anyone even imagine? Is anyone else familiar with the syndrome? I don't suppose
Has
anyone
anyone
here.
ever experienced it?
No.
That's actually surprising to me.
Yeah.
I've had, it's Peggy, I've had students that have had that.
Oh yeah, and what did they say about it?
I've had students say they've seen animals,
Right.
shapes and colors. And I'm, you know, totally blind myself. I find it to be very fascinating. I think it would be scary. They know it's not real, but yet they're thinking that it's really there and it's really occurring.
Right, and it's still generated by your own nervous system, you know, so it's like internal, you know, and I'm sure people with schizophrenia and other mental health caused hallucinations, you know, it probably seems a lot more real, you know, the perception of reality itself, you know, whether it's generated internally or not, you know, you certainly questioning all your foundations and underpinnings of what is and what is not. It's got to be real freaky. So my answer is, I just don't know, Elsa. But when I cross that bridge, hopefully I'll do it in style.
And let me know.
Right?
The next program. Naisha, you have a question, comment?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to comment because you had asked the question about if someone has an experience or a likeness to an experience of that. So I'm not in that space where you are, but I just like to comment on a likeness of experiencing that would be kind of like if you were indoors and you know how you were younger or you were a kid and it was really warm and you felt like you could see water in front of your eyes, like, you know, that waviness that appeared to be water because it was so hot. I'm not sure if anyone else understands what I'm talking about. It's very humid and you're inside and you can see like a vision of water in front of you, not like blue water, but just like clear. You see like the humidity, like the hot
Like a
air.
Fantana Morgana or like a mirage.
Yeah, yes, yeah, kind of like that. I'm just, you know,
not like you're seeing a body of water like an ocean, but just clear. It's clear. It's water in front of you. You can see the humidity. That's all.
Kind of like ripples in the air.
Exactly. You got it. Exactly.
All right. Anyone got any funny
Other
jokes?
comments? Doug, do you have another area to cover?
Let's see. I think I've hit everything. I think I've hit all the, I was hoping for a little bit more consumer involvement. Hello.
Linda, I
What?
have one more. I have one more mental condition, Parkinson.
Yes. A very,
Yes, thank you,
Wait.
Stacy.
My sister Alicia's father-in-law has it.
Doug, would you like to talk on that a little bit? Good suggestion, Stacy.
yeah, wow. Talk about throwing a conundrum wrapped inside a riddle. So Parkinson's, as I'm not sure if everyone is aware, so it affects a wide variety of motor and cognitive functions in the brain. Yeah, so we're going to be, if I have someone, I could be confronted with a mobility impairment, right? Because they get, kind of stiff. So that presents, how are we going to cross the street in plenty of time? How much additional support does this consumer need? There's also hallucinations that come along with Parkinson's. It can also, I believe it can also affect the mood. The student may not be up for that particular lesson, or when they finish their lessons, they may just not want to take that trip. They could be just in a bad place. Wow, yeah. Well, what about your father-in-law? How does he cope with it? Or does he have a vision impairment on top of Parkinson's, or is it just Parkinson's?
Yeah, it's my sister. It's my sister's father-in-law.
Okay.
In the beginning, they thought he had dementia and whatever. I'm like, he don't have that. Because my brother-in-law, grandmother, no, it's grandmother, another family member of his had it. Like, no, that's Parkinson's. You need to get him to a doctor. Because he was like always worried about his wife. He like to the point where it's like, we'll take care of her, just back off, or bring her back to the room.
Like an OCD sort of a thing.
Yeah, that's how it was in the beginning. But then like now he has hallucinations where he thinks he's a chopper pilot again, because that's what he was when he was younger in the Air Force. So that's what his hallucination is.
Wow.
But then he also has the,
signal strength.
but I haven't seen him in a while. But he's in a memory care place in Georgia. I haven't seen him in a while.
So, if I were to provide instruction to this individual, maybe in the care facility, I have some, it's not the same thing at all, but I do have.
I know.
I do.
You talking to family members? I don't think you're yelling at us.
Okay.
No, yes, it is a family member.
I do have a student who has a significant cognitive deficit, and I'm not entirely sure I can have meaningful O&M with this particular student. I am interacting with the student. I've had an occasion to interact with the student. When I see the student the next time, and I hope that the people around this student were able to reinforce the lessons that I provided, but that next visit will greatly influence how I proceed with this particular student. Now, if I had the luxury of time and infinite resources, yeah, I could probably keep coming back and work with this individual. In the case of of individuals who have dementia or Parkinson's, or who have very, very involved cognitive or mental health issues. If I had the ability to provide O&M within that controlled environment, I think it could actually be quite meaningful. And maybe if we could actually stray out of that controlled environment into a less controlled environment, such as the street in front of the care center. I guess the environment and situation are huge dictators of what I could teach. So teaching someone with Parkinson's how to cross a very rural street that is very lightly trafficked so that they do it on an all quiet would be very different than someone who has the identical cognitive impairment and teaching them how to cross a street in Morristown or in Newark. So I guess what I'm saying is, and just to get back to what Linda said earlier, is we have to take the entire individual into consideration when it comes to lessons. Not just their medical condition, not just their vision loss, but also where they're going, why they're going, and how we're going to get there.
And Doug, this is Elsa. I imagine in those situations too, involving family support is key, or if somebody isn't within a facility, staff support would be key, and really making those environmental modifications, and also the predictability of everything, predictability of everyday life. And, things being where they're supposed to be, and just kind of having that predictable routine, I imagine, lends to success as well.
Absolutely. This individual's kitchen supplies have to remain in this place at all times, no exceptions, period. That door must be closed at all times. Those steps cannot be accessed. I've taught sighted guide to, I think I've taught sighted guide in the 8 months I've worked for the commission more than any other technique. And I've taught it to people who are not visually impaired.
Sure.
So wide variety of family members, educators, other caregivers. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And just because a person is under care, whether it's their family or whether it's a managed facility, there can still be meaningful O&M, but we might have to greatly tweak the lesson and the environment in which that lesson is going to be taught, and where that individual is going to use that skill set. So maintain that environment and maintain that level of predictability, and we could still have a good outcome. Not everyone I teach is going to be sailing across Broad Street at Market.
Are there any other questions or comments for Doug?
Any funny jokes? I could always use one.
Anybody got a joke? Well, if there is nothing, Doug, that was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
You really give everybody some good food for thought. I hope they all carry it to their mobility instructors, and maybe their mobility instructor might be you.
Could very well be.
You never know. Thank you so much for your time. Well, we have another question. Tracy, before we go, you'll be our last question.
Can you hear me?
Now unmuted.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I somehow blacked out my screen. So I've been stuck in limbo for a bit, but I've figured out, thank goodness.
Ask you to start your video.
Okay, let me try. Alt V.
Zoom meeting video now starting.
Okay, well, I'm glad that those that have vision can see me, because I can't see anything at all. I somehow blacked the screen out and have been stuck in limbo. But I have a question for you, Doug, and thank you so much for this great information. My goodness, I can't wait to listen to the recording. My question to you is, how do you assist someone that has like an alter ego personality that has vision impairment?
Wow. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not very familiar with that particular condition at all. I would imagine I would just proceed with caution. Look for cues that it might be time to discontinue the lesson. I would imagine that stress could aggravate that situation. It could very well be that if I had an individual who had that diagnosis, there will probably be no hour-long lessons. It will probably, right? The lessons will be short and sweet and to the point. We eventually, a time may come where we chain the lessons together. It's like, okay, we're gonna take our last 3 lessons and we're gonna chain these things together and work like that. So, try and minimize the stress as much as possible, with the caveat that eventually O&M is supposed to get stressful. The goal is, once you get some skills under your belt, now we get to the more complex environment. Your home was a great place to start. Now we're going to the backyard. Now we're going to the bodega 2 blocks away. So it could very well be that I'm going to push that student until they push back.
Right. Yeah.
Now, hopefully I have enough skill and information that I don't push too far, but I'm supposed to push you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I think, Doug, that communication between the instructor and then the student is important as well. So the more you get to know that person, and you can tell where their mood shift might change, not necessarily the personality changes, but the mood shift changes, or that you can ask them for cues as to when they're feeling a little moody, or just to automatically let you know, so that you'll know what to look for.
I usually default to mood across the spectrum of disability. If I think that someone is getting a little bit cranky, I say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should head back. So that's a big indicator. And you know what? I don't have to know a lot about anything when it comes to that. If someone is displaying that they are not happy anymore with the situation, maybe it's just time to discontinue the lesson. It could be because of their cognitive disability or their metabolic disability, or they're just having a really bad day. Either way, if you're in a bad mood, I will not have I can't provide meaningful instruction under those circumstances, but to have that extra level of information, why is this person moody? What are the triggers? And, is there anything I could do to walk it back, at least until we get back home? Fantastic. So yes, getting all this under the belt is huge and crucial.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Tracy.
You're welcome.
Well, Doug, I want to thank you so much. This was a great topic, very informative. And as I was saying, I hope everybody brings this back to their mobility instructors, gives them a lot of information so they can provide you great instruction. Thank you for joining VLANJ Voices, and we encourage you all to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can listen to these and all other recordings of our programs that we run on Wednesday evenings. I believe we have upcoming next would be Tech Talks, November 2nd.
Ooh. Multiple.
Doug, thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure.
It was a lot of fun, guys.
So much. When you're in the neighborhood. We hope to see you soon.
I'll be passing by very shortly.
Okay, come and stop in.
All right. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you, everyone, for joining us. You have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
Good night, all.
Good night, everyone.
night.
Stay
Stay well, everyone.
Thank you, Doug.
Leave meeting button.
Good night.
Good night.